On this episode, we're going to take you along with us to one of the most beautiful vacation spots in the U.S., Mackinaw Island and the Grand Hotel, all in the great state of Michigan. There's a lot of great and fascinating history here that we'll be sharing with you, including how the Grand Hotel came to be, to the fact that Thomas Edison, Mark Twain, as well as 5 U.S. presidents have all stayed here at one point. This is a very special place that will truly take you back to another time and leave you with some of the best memories you've ever had. So pack your bags and let's get on the boat, because you don't want to miss out on this adventure, right here on History and Relics. In the mid to late 1800s, Mackinaw Island was rapidly transforming into a top vacation destination for the masses of Midwestern tourists. Recognizing opportunity, representatives from the Michigan Central Railroad, the Grand Rapids and Indiana Railroad, as well as the Detroit and Cleveland Steamship Navigation Company, formed the Mackinaw Island Hotel Company. These individuals desired to capitalize upon the nation's yearning for recreational travel, and saw Mackinaw Island as the perfect place to construct a luxurious hotel. To create what they hoped would serve as America's summer palace, the group commissioned the talented Detroit-based architectural firm Mason & Rice. The construction project was managed by a prominent builder by the name of Charles Caskey. Until the fall of 1886, the 35-year-old Caskey had only built cottages, but that didn't stop him from bidding on construction of the 210-room, 625-foot lavish hotel. With the building site on an otherwise small island, 7 miles from the shore of a remote part of the northern Great Lakes, it certainly made things much more challenging. Not to mention there was a deadline to have the hotel open by the summer of 1887, which was less than a year away, as many of the rooms had already been sold. In order to tackle the strict deadline, Caskey closed his cottage building business for a year. He borrowed enormous amounts of money and made nearly impossible timeline promises to wealthy barons such as Cornelius Vanderbilt and later William Henry Vanderbilt, who owned the New York Central Railroad, of which the Michigan Central Railroad was a subsidiary of. Caskey assembled a crew of 600 men to live in a tent village set up in the snow and mud of Mackinaw Island. Now keep in mind, there were no power tools, no motorized transports, and no supplementary businesses to house and feed this army of men. And with similar enormous projects going on around the Northeast, the labor supply was being depleted to the point that Caskey had to pay double wages to get the workforce he needed. Using only horses, more than 1.5 million board feet of lumber was sledded across the frozen and icy Great Lakes, both day and night, and in all weather conditions over the winter of 1886 and 1887. The pile of lumber became so large it could be seen from the mainland. When construction work began in March of 1887, 3 shifts of tradesmen would be commenced into service, working around the clock by lantern and candlelight. But it didn't take long before some troublemakers found out about the rushed building plans and stopped working, demanding triple wages. But Caskey stood his ground. Double wages is what we agreed on, and double wages is what you get. And if you don't like it, you can leave the camp and make your own way back to the mainland. You're not eating any of my food, you're not sleeping in any of my tents, and you're not leaving on any of my boats if you quit. The next public boat doesn't get here for another 3 weeks." Well, it didn't take long for the men to reconsider their position, and soon went back to work in what must have been an amazing work pace, as construction was completed in just 93 days, factoring in, of course, 3 days where no work was done due to the labor dispute. Similar hotels during this same era took nearly a year to build. The hotel was initially called Planck's Grand Hotel after John Oliver Planck, an investor and one of America's top hotel builders and operators. Planck was brought in by one of the railroad owners to serve as the hotel's first manager. Planck managed the hotel from 1887 to 1890. On July 10, 1887, the first hotel guests stepped off a luxury steamliner that docked at Mackinaw Island and made their way to the lobby to check in to their rooms, which cost $3 to $5 a night. By 1919, rooms had increased to $6 a night. It was also about this same time that W. Stewart Woodfill was hired as a desk clerk. Woodfill served the hotel well, working in several capacities over the course of the next several years. The Great Depression had a tight grip on the hotel, almost to the brink of collapse, literally. The plan had been for the debtors to take ownership, then tear the place down, salvaging what they could by selling the lumber and building materials as scrap. However, Woodfill wasn't about to let that happen. Woodfill managed to scrape up enough money to buy the hotel, saving it from being destroyed. Woodfill opened the hotel the next year and kept it open through the 1930s and World War II. Through Woodfill's outstanding stewardship, the hotel reached new heights in its popularity. However, it wasn't until 1951 that the Grand Hotel actually turned a profit on its operations. 1951 was also when R.D. Dan Musser II, a college student, went to work at the Grand Hotel. He eventually became president of the hotel, followed by its chairman and owner, purchasing the hotel from his uncle, W. Stewart Woodfill, in 1979. Today, the hotel is still owned by the Musser family. R.D. Dan Musser III is the hotel's president. There are no cars, trucks, or even golf carts allowed on Mackinaw Island. They've been banned pretty much since they were invented. In their place, islanders depend on the power of their own feet or riding bicycles. But for the most part, there are some 600 horses here that help keep people moving around the island, in carriages and wagons. In fact, if you're an avid golfer, the Grand Hotel's award-winning golf course, the Jewel, is the only course in the world where players are transported between the front and back 9 by horse-drawn carriage. The Grand Hotel maintains over 125,000 flowers. More than 1 ton of flower bulbs are planted each fall to create the many gardens on the hotel grounds. Variations include tulips, daffodils, and geraniums, the hotel's signature flower. Oh, and let's not forget the Lilac Festival, held on the island around June of each year, that celebrates the many varieties of historical lilacs, many of which were brought here during the colonial era. Each of the Grand Hotel's 397 guest rooms has its own unique character, artfully decorated by Carlton Varney of Dorothy Draper & Company, Inc. in New York City. Varney is also well known for his design consulting at the White House. At 660 feet long, the Grand Hotel's front porch is the longest in the world. No other hotel around can match it. And speaking of the front porch, the hotel also hosted the first public demonstration of Thomas Edison's phonograph on the porch. Mark Twain also made this a regular location on his speaking tours in the Midwest. In 1946, a romantic musical and water ballet produced by MGM was filmed at the hotel and entitled This Time for Keeps, starring Esther Williams, Jimmy Durante, and Johnny Johnston, which later premiered in 1947. The Esther Williams swimming pool at the Grand Hotel was later named after the starring actress. Another movie filmed on location here was the 1980 romantic fantasy drama Somewhere in Time, starring Christopher Reeve and Jane Seymour. It is a film adaptation of the 1975 novel Bid Time Return by Richard Matheson, who also wrote the screenplay. In real life, Reeve and Seymour fell in love with one another while working on the film, but things broke off after Reeve learned of an ex-girlfriend expecting their child. However, they remained good friends. 5 U.S. presidents have visited here: Harry Truman, John F. Kennedy, Gerald Ford, who is a native of Grand Rapids, Michigan, George H.W. Bush, and Bill Clinton. Additionally, 6 suites are named and designed after 7 former First Ladies, including the Jacqueline Kennedy Suite, Lady Bird Johnson, Betty Ford, Rosalind Carter, Nancy Reagan, and finally the Barbara and Laura Bush suites. Now, speaking of other dignitaries or celebrities who have visited the Grand Hotel over the years, here are just a few you might recognize. In 1957, the Grand Hotel was designated a state historical building. In 1972, it was added to the National Register of Historic Places. And on June 29, 1989, the hotel was made a National Historic Landmark. While no dogs or other pets are allowed at the hotel, there is an ice cream parlor named after a Scottish Terrier. Sadie's Ice Cream Parlor is the perfect place to cool down. They feature the Grand Hotel's pecan ball ice cream that's inspired by the hotel's signature dessert and is made using Michigan's own Hudsonville ice cream. As for Sadie herself, her full name was Roundtown Mercedes of Mary Scott and was owned by the hotel's proprietors Amelia and R.D. Musser. In 2009, Sadie, being just 4 years old at the time, won the National Dog Show and the AKC Eukanuba National Championship. But in 2010, she became the dog world's first Triple Crown winner when she was named Best in Show at Westminster. Sadly, though, she passed away at age 9 in August of 2014, but she is forever remembered and honored at the Grand Hotel. Last, but certainly not least, most everyone has heard of Mackinaw Island's fudge. And how can you pass up such a treat when you're visiting here? After all, you have over a dozen fudge shops to choose from, including the original Murdoch's Fudge and Joanne's Fudge. During the peak travel season, the shops collectively can expect to make upwards of 10,000 pounds of fudge a day. So now, let us share with all of you some of the sights and sounds of Mackinaw Island and the Grand Hotel that we experienced during our most recent visit here. Enjoy.
public park. That is Marquette Park. That is dedicated to Father Marquette, who was a missionary here on the island. Now, that actually used to be a garden in the 1800s that was tended to by soldiers at Fort Mackinac. Now it is just a place where seagulls poop on innocent bystanders trying to have a picnic. Speaking from experience, and no, I don't want to talk about it. Did you get a good picture of their butts? Coming up here on your right, this is the Benjamin Blacksmith Shop. They do live blacksmithing demonstrations. If you like watching a man hit hot metal with a huge hammer, go for it. I personally prefer horse butts. You should see my camera roll. There's a lot of horse butts. On your right, that is the Agatha and Edward Biddle House, known as the Biddle House. It is the oldest known residence on the island, dating back to the 1830s. On your left, that is Cindy's riding stables. There you can rent out your own saddle horse. You can take those horses throughout the trails of the Mackinaw State Park. Now, Mackinaw is a little over 85% state park and severely haunted, but ignore that. We'll get to that later. It's not important right now. Right. Now, this road right here, this is known as Lilac Lane. All of these bushes and trees that we pass, they're pretty much all lilacs. You can see our lilacs starting to bloom now. Mackinac is known for having the widest variety and highest density of lilacs in the entire world. We have an entire lilac festival in June. It is a week-long festival that ends with a huge parade down Main Street. It's awesome. I get out of work early. It's great. I'm a big fan. Coming up here on your right, that is the Either Or Cottage. Owned by two sisters, it is known that either or will answer the door. Be brave, Larry. Be brave. Don't be dumb. Don't be dumb. Don't do dumb things. Ignore the voices in your head. They're very brave. I'm a very proud mother. Most of the time. On your right, that is the Little Stone Church. Don't ask me what happened to the big stone church. I legally can't talk about it. However, all of that stone is limestone that was quarried from the island. All of that stained glass was imported from New York, and it depicts early missionary work that was done at the time. There is currently plexiglass over it. That is because the golfers next door are just really bad at looking. That is the Grand Hotel Golf Course, known as the Jewel of the Island. It is the only golf course in the world where you have to take a carriage ride to get to the back nine. About a 30 to 40 minute carriage ride all the way back there. Our company does provide the shuttle that goes back there, believe it or not. It is called Golf Shuttle. We're very creative. On your right, you're going to see that red telephone booth. That was Christopher Reeve's original changing room. Thank you. I'll be here all summer. Over to your left, that is a small, quaint building. Some call it grand. I think it's alright. If you didn't know, that's the Grand Hotel. All those tulips out front. In total, when they are all alive and thriving, they plant about 14,000 bulbs to create that entire arrangement.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed our program. If you like our content, we ask that you give us a thumbs up, a like, share with your friends, subscribe to our channel, and ring that notification bell so you always know when our new content is published. And all of this costs nothing, but means a lot to us and keeps us growing. You may also leave us a tip if you choose. The address is provided here on your screen, and a link is provided in the description area below. So until next time, everyone, this one is history.